It was an ordinary summer afternoon in 1985 when 10-year-old Emily Carter and her 8-year-old sister, Lily, were last seen riding their bikes near the edge of their quiet coastal neighborhood. The sun was bright, the air was still, and nothing seemed out of place until the girls didn't come home for dinner. What followed was one of the most heartbreaking and baffling missing persons cases the small seaside town had ever seen. Despite search parties, police investigations, and national news coverage, there was no trace of the Carter sisters. No footprints, no witnesses, no goodbyes, just silence. Their family never stopped looking. Posters faded over time, but their mother's porch light stayed on every night for 15 long years. People talked, speculated, even accused, but there were no answers. Then, in the summer of 2000, something impossible happened. A local fisherman, out on his usual morning route, pulled up a rusted metal container tangled in seaweed. At first, he thought it was just trash. But when he pried it open, what he found sent shockwaves through the community and reopened a case. Everyone thought was long, cold. Inside were belongings thought to be gone forever. A child's shoe, a small necklace, and something else that would turn the entire investigation upside down. Authorities were immediately called, and within hours, the quiet harbor was crawling with law enforcement. The discovery didn't just reopen old wounds, it revealed that the truth had been hiding in the deep all along. And it was only beginning to surface. The items pulled from the sea were confirmed by the Carter family within hours. The tiny pink sneaker belonged to Lily, the same one she wore the day she disappeared. The delicate silver necklace engraved with the letter E had been a birthday gift to Emily from her grandmother just weeks before that summer afternoon. The rusted container, a battered old toolbox, looked like it had been underwater for years. But how it got there and what else it might be connected to was still a mystery. Investigators quickly returned to the original case files. Back in 1985, the girls had been playing just 2 blocks from their home when a neighbor saw them heading toward the beach. That was the last confirmed sighting. At the time, authorities had searched the shoreline nearby woods and even drained a small pond near the playground. Nothing turned up, no signs of a struggle, no obvious trail. The theory that they'd wandered too far and drowned had always existed. But the tides would have returned something: shoes, bikes, clothing. Nothing had ever surfaced. Until now, detectives reopened the case with fresh eyes and new forensic tools. The fisherman who found the box had dragged his net nearly 2 miles off the coast, in an area that had never been searched before. That detail shifted everything. Why would something belonging to 2 missing girls end up that far out to sea and in a sealed container? Was it a tragic accident, or had someone hidden the truth on purpose all these years? The discovery reignited the entire town. People who had long moved on nor tried to suddenly found themselves pulled back into the mystery that had haunted their community for over a decade. News vans lined the quiet coastal streets once again. Some locals were hopeful, others wary. The question everyone asked was the same: why now? And why there? Detectives began re-interviewing people who had lived near the Carter family in 1985. A few had passed away. Some had moved away, and others were reluctant to talk, afraid of stirring up old rumors. One name kept coming up: Russell Green, a retired handyman who had done odd jobs around the neighborhood back then. He lived just 3 houses down from the Carter home and had once helped fix their fence. At the time, he'd been questioned but never charged. He claimed he'd seen the girls riding toward the beach and nothing more. But now, with new evidence and renewed pressure, his name was back on the list. Meanwhile, a retired officer who worked the original case came forward with something strange. He remembered a tip from a local fisherman back in 1985, a report of a man loading a heavy soup box onto a small boat near the docks just after the girls disappeared. The report had been filed, but somehow never followed up. That box could very well be the one now recovered from the sea. As the investigation grew deeper, a pattern began to form. Pieces that never seemed to connect were now circling the same shadow, and the truth felt closer than ever. Investigators zeroed in on Russell Green, now living alone in a small trailer on the edge of town. When questioned, he was calm, almost too calm, claiming he had nothing new to say. But his stories from the past didn't quite line up with his statements now. Back in 1985, he said he hadn't seen the girls after the morning. Now, he claimed he saw them late in the afternoon. When asked why that changed, he shrugged and said time blurs with age. But for detectives, it was more than just a memory slip. It was a red flag behind the scenes. Forensic teams analyzed the contents of the toolbox. Sea damage made most of the items difficult to trace, but inside a small compartment, hidden beneath the liner, was something that hadn't been reported before. A single Polaroid photo, faded but intact. It showed two young girls standing on the dock, both smiling. Behind them, a man was visible, partially cut off by the frame. The photo wasn't dated, but one of the detectives recognized the boat in the background did belong to Green back in the 80 extension. Climbed as the team worked to track down any remaining evidence tying Green to the scene. A court order was secured to search his property, and what they found sent chills through the rumor-rusted fishing hook necklace. Identical to one Emily was known to wear, buried beneath a floorboard in his shed. The pieces were falling into place, and the truth was no longer buried. Just as the case seemed to be closing in on Russell Green, something completely unexpected happened. DNA results from the recovered necklace and the items in the toolbox came back from the lab. None of the genetic material matched Russell. In fact, there was no trace of him at all. Even more shocking, the DNA profile pulled from the necklace matched someone already in the system, someone who had died years earlier. A former dock worker named Gerald Miles, who had drowned in a boating accident just 2 months after the girls vanished in 1985. Gerald had never been on the suspect list. He was seen as a harmless loner who worked odd jobs and lived in a rented shack near the marina. But now, with this sudden link to the case, everything changed. Why was Gerald in possession of Emily's necklace? Was his death really an accident? Or had someone silenced him to keep him from digging into old reports? Detectives discovered something else buried deep in the archives. Gerald had filed a complaint just days before his death, claiming he had seen something disturbing near the dock late one night. Report was vague and never followed up. Now, it seemed more like a warning as investigators reopened Gerald's case. Another twist hit. A call came in from a woman in her 40s claiming she had information about the Carter sisters. Her voice shook. "I think I was there that day," she said. "And I don't think the girls were alone." The woman who came forward identified herself as Sarah Weller. She had been just 10 years old in 1985, living 2 blocks from the Carters. Her memory had always been cloudy, tucked away under layers of childhood fear. But after seeing the news, something clicked. She remembered playing near the marina that afternoon and hearing voices near the dock. When she peeked from behind a stack of fishing crates, she saw the Carter sisters, Mealy and Lily, standing with 2 men. One was Gerald Miles. The other, she said with quiet certainty, was not Russell Green. It was someone in uniform. That single detail shook the investigation to its core. They started digging into base records from the nearby naval station and found that a man named L.T. Thomas Harrow had worked security at the marina during that time. His file was spotless, almost to clean. A deeper background check revealed that Harrow and Miles had worked together before the military. Both employed by a private shipping company with questionable practices. With this new lead, investigators searched Harrow's old home, now abandoned. In the basement, behind a false wall, they found boxes of records maps of the coastline, lists of coordinates, and photographs. Among them was a photo of the Carter girls on the dock, not from afar, but posed like a keepsake. The mystery of the missing sisters had finally unraveled. But just as authorities prepared to close the case, one final discovery came in. One of the girls' birth certificates was a forgery. The forged birth certificate turned out to be Harrow's final attempt to erase every trace of the Carter sisters. He'd altered their identities on paper and buried the originals inside his private files, hoping the case would never be reopened. When authorities uncovered those documents alongside the photos and maps, they finally had everything they needed. Thomas Harrow was arrested and charged with kidnapping, evidence tampering, and conspiracy. Gerald Miles, once a suspect, was cleared of wrongdoing in both the girls' disappearance and his own tragic death. The forensic review showed he'd only tried to help when he found the box, and Harrow had used him as a scapegoat. The Carter family, after 15 years of wondering if Emily and Lily would ever be found, received official apologies and a settlement from the naval station for its role in the cover-up. They never recovered the girls' remains, but in a quiet ceremony on the old dock, the community honored their memory with a memorial plaque that listed every clue, every volunteer, and every year of hope.